Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go. All right, everyone, please make so much noise for Heather. Our surprise guest.
Thanks for coming at last minute.
You were coming at last minute. Oh my goodness. Heather Langenkamp, right here on Elm Street. Wow.
Hey, everybody.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to be here. Is everyone happy to be here?
So excited.
A lot of people drove a long way. I met almost half of my guests actually driven here from someplace else. So.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for joining us because, this was not planned. It was very last minute, and I'm so grateful. And I'm especially grateful because you weren't scheduled for a panel. And
I know that
That's like the first time in a very long time that I haven't been scheduled for one, so.
Okay, so I love you some Freddie, but I love your body of work in general.
You're very complimentary.
It's all true. And I watch the obscure stuff, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about some obscure stuff.
Does the audience want to hear it? Okay.
Before you roll
there's
out.
something really obscure. Last time we interviewed me, you brought up some obscure ones.
Yes, well, I'm going more obscure.
Oh no.
Okay, so another.
There's a reason they're obscure.
No, there's not. Okay, so this one is always.
Usually these are not very good.
No, okay, so this is a little stranger.
I can go back to my high school play.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be great? As a theater nerd, I would love that. But, so as a fan of your co-star in this specific project, I wanted to ask you about this for a while. Sleeping Bag
Oh, yeah.
with the late, great John Dye.
Yes. And I was actually just recently learned of his death.
Yeah,
Very sudden. So John Dye is an actor, and he and I ran through the forest in Big Bear, California, with a giant pickup truck called Bigfoot. If anyone is a pickup fan, this was the start of the show. Actually, they took such good care of the pickup truck. And I remember they, ZZ Top was one of my favorites, and I somehow got the part. We went up to Big Bear, California, and I just thought we were going to shoot and then come home. And so I didn't really bring an overnight bag. I remember we got on the bus to go up to the shooting location, and everyone had like a suitcase, and I'm like, "Are we spending the night there?" You're like, "Yeah, didn't you know that?" I'm like, "No." And so I ended up having to wear the same clothes for three days, but that's what I remember. But actually shooting it was really, really fun. And I finally got to meet ZZ Top at the very last day, the very last hour we were there. And, they are superstars, so they kind of came out and shook our hand and then, went back into their limousine and drove away.
What was the most challenging part about shooting that music video?
Well, it's at night in the deep forest, and it was, they were running here and there. I'm always running. I never have the proper footwear. Running, practically barefoot through, lots of stick, prickers and leaves and sticks and things like that. But that one was pretty painless, I have to say. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't get injured, and I thought the storyline was really sweet. And it's like a little girl, a young woman. Her grandmother reads her bedtime story, and then what's the plot? Like I'm saving a bag of money or something?
Yeah, you're going to find a bag of money.
Yeah, I'm going to find a bag of money, like we all do every day. Go look for that bag of money under a tree stump. And then John Dye is there to help me.
Yeah, he
It's
rescues you.
magical. Yeah, it's kind of a magical story.
It is, and then kind of is Freddie adjacent with the whole dream.
Yeah, the dream thing was very Freddie-ish.
Yeah, dream situations in there, and it's like, is that why they cast you? Because it was after.
I bet it was.
Right.
Yeah, I bet it was. And I'm trying to think, I met Jennifer Rubin on that, because she was the girlfriend of the producer.
Okay.
And that was way before we ever met on Elm Street. So I'm remembering that too in the trailer. I met Jennifer Rubin. So
And last but not least, John Dye was one of my favorite actors of the 80s. And a lot, he always made me laugh. He did some really good comedies, and so do you have any specific memories for working with him?
I mean, working with him we had a lot of laughs. I couldn't tell you what we laughed about, but we had a lot of fun. And then I remember after we did go out to have breakfast one time at this restaurant where they had these famous sandwiches called Monte Cristos. Do you have those here? And I'd never had a Monte Cristo sandwich. Like, you gotta have a sandwich. And so he made me order it, and it was fantastic. It was probably the last time I even had a Monte Cristo sandwich. And then there's a famous restaurant. It was like a brunch place on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles that served them. It was the only place that did. So when you went there, you had to order that. Kind of like when you're in Atlanta, you have to have the special dish, in fact, chicken and waffles or whatever it is here that everybody eats.
Yeah, you can get a Monte Cristo pretty much at any diner.
Okay.
Any Greasy Spoon. We can get them in Chicago or
really?
Indianapolis, right, all that. And I'm sure the Metro up there has them on their menu too.
Well, yeah.
So we must get a Monte Cristo in honor of.
Nobody knows what that sandwich is probably, but it's delicious.
Like
a deep fried sandwich.
My ex-husband had to educate me on the Monte Cristo too.
Yeah.
And I never had it. That's amazing.
That's the only thing I really remember. My memory is.
It also was.
Stop asking me questions about 40 years ago, please.
He said it was a 3-day shoot, so that was very quick also.
Yeah, mine would have just been 2 days, but yeah, it was just 2 full nights and then part of the day. Actually, the one other thing is that, because I'm from Oklahoma, and you can see all the stars in Oklahoma at night, like a normal place. But having lived in LA for a couple of years, when they took us to the mountains, we saw the stars again, and I remember thinking, you have to actually leave town to see the stars in LA. And it was kind of a sad realization, but I haven't seen the stars in so many years. So. Anyway.
So good. Anyway, that one, I was just reminded of that one only because a couple of weeks ago we anniversaried his passing.
Oh, so you really were a big fan.
Yes, and I'm a fan of his brothers too. His brother writes operas.
Interesting.
And so big, talented family. So I've been following his brother for quite a while as well.
We'll have to look into that.
I'm a theater person.
Yes.
So huge fan of his brother Jerry Dye as well. But yeah, so I always remember, I think January 11th, 12th or something. And I was like, oh, but then I'm like, Heather, don't ask her about sleeping bag. Man.
I would climb inside my sleeping bag, yeah. It was a lot more innocent than that. I mean, there was no him climbing in my sleeping bag. That did not happen.
It was an adventure.
It was an adventure.
It was an adventure story. Do we have any audience questions for Ms. Heather?
What did you think when you first saw the script for New Nightmare? What was your take on that?
Well, because I thought it was really dark. And the first draft that I read, the whole stalking Nancy, that was a much stronger part of the storyline. And it was a lot darker in a lot of different ways. That I remember thinking to myself, I don't think people are gonna like this as much, and I didn't think people were gonna buy that I was playing Heather Langenkamp. And then I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna ask my husband if he minds if I play myself in a movie? And then I'm like, and how am I gonna tell my dad and my mom, I'm gonna play Heather Langenkamp, and our neighbor's gonna be out there like that.
And also, the person playing your husband wasn't your husband either.
The person playing my husband, but he's playing David. So I had all these things that immediately occurred to me, I had to be a politician and smooth over all of these relatives of mine and my husband, and so my first reaction was, I don't know, I just don't know if, and Wes hadn't made a movie in a while, and his reputation had kind of fallen a little bit. I mean, he wasn't in the prime of his career anymore, and I didn't know if he was going to be able to pull it off, and that was my not having faith in Wes. But then I talked to Wes, and he was like, I really want you to do it, and it's going to be, this idea is going to be something that's never been done before, and he kind of convinced me how great it was actually. And then I said, well, if I do it, I want to make the same money that Robert makes. And that was just a total non-starter. Like, I have to give my name to this character, and I have to be Heather Langenkamp forever in this movie. I was like, I really felt that we should have favored nations, is what they call it, and everyone makes the same, or the same deal pretty much. And of course, New Line Cinema just thought I was being absolutely ridiculous, and then I said to my representative, I said, but who else are they going to get? Like, if this isn't the one moment where you can stand up and say, this is what I want, or I'm walking basically, then I can never do that for the rest of my career, so I might as well try it, And it didn't go anywhere, and in fact, Wes called me and says, well, they're passing. And I said, are you kidding me? Who are they going to get to play Heather? And he's like, they'll find somebody. And then I realized that they were totally bluffing. But because if they were willing to pass with that demand, I decided, okay, you tell me, what is it worth to you? And it was like hardly anything. So my ego was really bruised actually after that whole thing. And so I entered the project. I mean, I was very happy to have the job, obviously, and I really wanted to do it. And I wanted to work with Wes again, and I thought the idea was so good. But I entered the project with a little bit of hurt feelings and the sense of, if you can't ask for what you think you deserve when you're playing yourself with your name in this big franchise that's making a lot of money, then I'll never be able to. And that's kind of how I felt about it. But once we started shooting and I, got over my hurt feelings, it was a wonderful experience. And of course, New Line Cinema did have a lot of money, and so we got treated really well, and the costumes were nice, and so it was fine. But I mean, it's just a really good example as a woman in Hollywood. Even then, it wasn't possible to push for a negotiation that I felt was fair. And it's just been one of the problems in Hollywood, even today. So.
Well, I mean, look what happened with Neve Campbell in Scream.
And Neve is a perfect example too.
Exactly, and I'm so proud that
she's so gutsy, I know.
And okay.
And now actually,
someone who built the franchise, she is the Robert Englund of that franchise.
Yeah.
Pay the woman.
Yeah, and it's really funny because they don't have a qualm about offending a woman in that situation, but I just cannot even imagine a scenario where they would offend any of the other, either the monster characters or the Robert Englund type characters. And that's just it's just the way it is. So all you women out there, don't be discouraged.
Yeah.
It's a hard, it's a very tough road, no matter what career you have. And it's just a legacy. Like, so many people complain about the injustices of the past, and this is nothing like, say, what other people are dealing with in their lives. But I do have a tiny little sense of that sense of injustice that you feel like, you were just born into this body, and in addition, you're a woman, and other people are born into other bodies that just don't have the same value in this world. But I can't, other people have so many other different kinds of struggles. I don't compare myself, but I do empathize because for one, year, I kind of really was like, God, I just can't believe that this is the way it is. But I mean, we've all, it's hard to be a woman in Hollywood. I don't know why I picked that place. I'm trying to make a living, I don't know why.
Well, I mean, because you have to do it.
Well, because I wanted to so badly. Willing to give it all. You're willing to do whatever it takes. That's the truth. And a lot of people are in a lot worse situations back in the 80s at that time. Women had to, they subjected themselves to other types of humiliations to get parts, and we hear a lot about them now because 40 years later we're realizing like just how twisted and messed up that was. So at the time, believe me, a lot of people that I knew were compromising their values or doing things that they knew they were going to regret the next day, or deciding to not stand on ceremony, and now we, you know, I in fact I talked about it with James Janice the other day as he has a podcast now called Screams and Nightmares or something like that. If you don't know this thing that I did last week,
I'm not a stalker. I just like sleeping bags and
there's a podcast. Barbara Crampton produces it, and Catherine from Terrifier, yes, whatever her last name, she's the other host with James Janice, and we talk about nightmares that we've really had in real life.
Really?
And it's a really cute show. It's a YouTube show. And but we were talking, and I talked about a moment in Nightmare 7 when that tongue is wrapped around my head at the very last scene. And for some reason, that scene has stuck with me in my subconscious mind. Not so much today, but for about 10 years after we did that. And it made me feel so bad about myself. And because there was just some imagery in it that I did not care for. And when we shot this scene, a lot of the men on the set were kind of making jokes about the tongue and wrapping around my head. And, you know, they happened to use KY jelly to make all those things look shiny on screen. So like, you know, more KY, and you know, it was just a jokey, kind of funny, everyone's having a great time. And but for me, my brain was accepting all that input as embarrassing and humiliating, and I didn't like to be in that position. And I told Greg Nicotero, who's supposed to be here, he may know those special effects. I told him last month, or last time I saw him, you know, I had a lot of nightmares about that day. He's like, you did? I said, yeah, I felt really humiliated by, you know, just that whole situation where you guys are wrapping that thing around my head and making jokes. And he's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I said, why would you know? I wouldn't have said anything. And he said, yeah, we do things like that to actresses all the time. Like, that could be interpreted as humiliating, you know, and he's like, and I never stopped to think about that. And I said, well, maybe now, going forward, because you're making stuff for women all the time, like maybe you could pull them aside and say, we're gonna do this to you, we're gonna wrap this tongue around your head, and we're gonna slather it in KY jelly, and like, do you have any problems with that? And you know, you could just be a little bit more sensitive about imagery.
How about no jokes?
You know, or you know,
when
maybe,
you're filming
I didn't
it?
mind the jokes, but it was just not, I didn't know it was gonna affect me like that, frankly. I went home that night, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that day is over. And then I would have nightmares about it, and then I would have to be like talking about it to my husband, or he caught me sleepwalking, like trying to pull the tongues off of my face, and so you don't know what's going to hit you like that in your life. Like you can just think something is just an event, but then it will linger, and then you feel like, why did that linger? And you know, it just touched a nerve. You know, it literally, you know, touched a nerve in your psyche that you don't know anything about until it happens to you. And then Catherine, she's like, you know, that happened to me, but it was in a different situation. Maybe it was on Terrifier, but I felt like I wasn't being respected, and I was like wearing nothing, you know, and you're in a very vulnerable position. So I was glad that we talked about it, because I think the more we talk about it, then other people who are in the situation where you have to handle other people's feelings and other people's emotions, like to take care of that, you know, it's a big responsibility, and actresses often have to be in really vulnerable situations. I worked on a movie last year with Taylor Compton Smith. What's her last name? Scout Taylor Compton. Okay, I knew I was gonna get that back.
There's 3 names.
Scout Taylor Compton, and I play this witch, and I've always wanted to play a witch, and the movie's called Stalked. And when I come in, she's laying on the table, and her hands are tied up above her head, and her ankles are tied down, and she's, you know, I mean, she's probably in pain in real life, but she's also just imagining, you know, pretending, acting. And I just immediately felt so sorry for her. Like, I was like, I'm so glad I'm not you, and I'm so glad I'm the bad guy in this scene and I'm not your character. Because I realized like it's so hard to be that woman who has to be, you know, the victim, bound, gagged. And I thought that's the exact same situation where I wouldn't be surprised if she felt like really crappy that night when she got home. So
One more time, for those who missed it, what's that podcast called? So we can go listen.
it's called something like
Scream Dreams.
Scream Dreams. It just started.
Okay.
And I know the day that I went, they had Mike Flanagan, and then Barbara is kind of this like, she kind of appears in the middle of the show, and she offers like a little game. It's a super cute show.
Oh,
And yeah, so it just started.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really cute. A lot of the podcasts, horror podcasts, are really, really fun to listen to, right?
Yeah, I have one myself.
Yes, you do.
So now I got this gig. well, in our podcast, we break down a movie by segment. Favorite kill, epic line.
Yes.
We got best hair. We got a fashion moment.
Oh, nice.
So tell me, in any of your nightmare movies, do you have a specific fashion moment? Doesn't have to be your own either.
Well, I mean, yes. My favorite fashion moment in Nightmare on Elm Street 1
is when Johnny Depp is answering the phone in his bedroom and he's wearing that like midriff
yeah.
and those sweatpants and you get to see, oh. I saw the movie last night and I'm like, he's so gorgeous. That's my favorite fashion in all of Nightmare on Elm Street. And Nightmare 3, all of my fashion was so hideously ugly that I hated all of it. Except there's one blouse I wore that was like a purple color that I just thought was the prettiest color. That was the only thing I liked about it. I forgot that. But you know, that movie, because all the kids were, you know, in the mental hospital, they didn't get to wear kind of like the teenager clothes that most horror movies, teenagers have really cute outfits, like Nightmare 4. Like all the kids wear such cool outfits, and but Nightmare 3, it was really subdued in terms of the fashion.
Honestly, it's more realistic as well.
It's more realistic,
You know,
yeah.
I wasn't wearing all the trendy stuff you see on TV when I was in high school age, right?
And that kind of just started, I think, in the 90s when you see horror movies where everyone looks so fabulous. Yeah. And Nightmare 7, I think, my favorite fashion of that. Well, I wore this like leather vest. That's like had a lot of pockets. It was a Banana Republic vest. I still have it, and I would wear it even today.
You should do some in-costume photo ops with that and the shirt. And
That I would do that because they've asked me to like wear a costume, and I won't wear pajamas in a photo op. I just feel like that's too informal and I don't know, it's too creepy. But I could wear that. But that's from Nightmare 7, and people don't love that as much as
They don't.
But still, it's in the costume of the franchise.
Okay, I think I'll go dig it out.
I love that.
I don't think it would fit, but I could maybe I could go
think it would
take
fit.
it. No, I don't think it would.
You can see who the real fans are if they notice it.
Yeah, and I just wear a denim shirt under it, and I think I was wearing brown, like just brown pants. So it's easy to recreate that. No one's ever cosplayed it as far as I can see. Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
We know.
Yeah, we know. Deandra.
Oh no, one more. Your Irish friend.
Oh yeah, Elena.
Yeah.
She wears that too.
She wore that one.
Yeah. I have some really amazing cosplayer friends who always surprise me with their beautiful costumes. Friday.
I did have one, but you kind of already answered it a little bit. But I guess maybe, yeah. Because I listened to the podcast, and as I was listening to it the other day, I was thinking about the fact that like nowadays sets have this newer role of like intimacy coordinators for scenes that of sexual nature. Do you think if that was around in the 90s, that might have helped
Maybe.
on New Nightmare? And yeah, what?
I don't think anybody would have thought that this was a scene that would have required an intimacy coordinator. But on Midnight Club, that was the first time I actually met an intimacy coordinator, because we did have some of the actors had scenes together where they, and so what it does, I mean, for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, when I kissed Johnny, like they would have come in probably, and they would have discussed like where your hands could go and not go, and but how are you going to plan to do this kiss? And I think it would have just taken all the joy out of it, frankly. but for a lot of people it's not joyful at all. You know, it's very stress-inducing. So it's such a good question because it just shows you how things have evolved. And actually, I do have an actor friend who, despite all the coordinating with the intimacy coordinator, the actor still didn't get the message and was very inappropriate, and she felt very threatened, and he ended up getting fired.
Wow.
You know, so now if people aren't being as professional as they possibly can, you can get fired, and it's really tough. I hope I never have to do intimacy on screen. I mean, I've gotten so scared of it, like, I don't know, I don't know. I'm sure there'll be a moment when it will happen and I'll have to just face it. It's so not fun though, like you're wearing garments to hide your parts, and then you know, the set is closed, and then everybody's shouting, "Close set!" You know, it's so loud, and oh, it's bad. And then the director's embarrassed, and Wes Craven was so embarrassed that I had to kiss Johnny Depp, and he just didn't even want to look. He's like, "Okay, action."
Oh.
And then he was just mortified, but but he knew that it had to be part of the story, and he never talked to us about it.
It never happened.
It's like it never happened. You know, Wes is so modest.
And I did see a question somewhere back here. Someone's hand shot up for one final question.
I was going to ask, what's your favorite aspect about Nancy? Like, if you had to think of one thing you admire about her the most, what would it be?
Well, I watched the movie last night on a big screen for the first time in a long time. And I was just so amazed at her determination to just figure it out. Like, it wasn't even about getting Freddie or finding Freddie from the beginning. It was about trying to understand, like, what is going on. And then so she learns from Tina that they're sharing the same dream, and then she hears it from Rod, and then she hears it from Glenn, and then, you know, it finally kind of starts to dawn on her, like, we're all having this dream, and then she goes to the sleep center, gets the hat out of her dream. And at the time, you know, we're shooting it out of sequence, so I wasn't sure whether I was able to properly carry the suspense to make it bigger and bigger. But what I really loved about Nancy, watching her yesterday, was that nothing's gonna stop her from getting the answer. And when she does have the answer, she just knows what she has to do. She just has to go get him. And there's never, and I asked Wes, I said, was she fearless? He's like, no, she was not fearless. She had fear like everybody else, but she just was so determined. And I think that's really great, because you don't have to be fearless to be strong. You have to know that you're, you know, scared out of your mind, and you have to just keep going and face it. And that's, you know, the motto, you know, face it. You just have to face it, and it's become my motto because I love Nancy so much. In fact, one of my fans told me that line. She's like, "You just have to face it." This gal, if you ever see my documentary, it's called "I Am Nancy." But this one woman who lost her leg, both legs or one leg. Her name is Jude. She was in the hospital for many, many, many weeks, and she watched Nightmare on Elm Street every day. And I asked her, I said, why that movie? Like, what did that movie speak to you? How did it speak to you? And she says, you just have to face it. And I just could just think about this little girl in the hospital with her leg cut off, and that's her motto, is you just have to face it. And I've used it a million times in my own life. You know, when you just want to run away, you just want to, like, get back in bed and pull the covers over your head. Just face it, just get through it. And it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and I also related to Jude, because I've had some hospital Nightmare on Elm Street stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's been in the hospital, I mean, it's so grim.
Yeah, and when I was finally allowed to watch TV, or consuming sort of media, I went, of course, for my Nightmares 1 and 3. And
Well, I'm glad that she's inspiring. I always feel like, yeah, the idea of not taking care of this is just not there. She really has to know.
there's no other option.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of Nancy.
Everyone, please give it up.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us for last minute. May we get a photo, Heather?
1. Yeah. I'm gonna do it towards right around. 1, 2, 3, click. 1, 2, 3, click. 1, 2, 3, click.
Yeah. Everyone is left.